Back here on the PAC Sports Network for our halftime show, as we are at the break between Allegheny and Chatham. And we're now joined by the head coach of the Allegheny women's basketball team, Coach Kelly Muffley. Coach, first off, thanks so much for joining us today. I know that we're pretty early on in the season, but how have you assessed how your team has played through the first couple weeks of the year?
Yeah, great question. First off, thanks for having me too, Jack. I appreciate it. Early on for us is it's kind of tough because we're missing a really important part of our team, important group part of our group for the last 3 years in Jess Bicker, who's had a non-basketball surgery but should be back pretty soon. So I think ultimately our season's going to go differently than it has started with adding that piece back whenever that happens. We played Carnegie, played Case in our tip-off tournament, which is good competition, and got some first years, some experience early on. Just depth is a bit of a problem right now for us, but we're looking forward to getting better as a group in this early portion of the season so that it helps us towards down the end of the stretch.
Absolutely. I mean, you always hear coaches saying that, early on in the season, still figuring out lineups, personnel, rotation, so on and so forth. But during the offseason, what was kind of the big thing that your team really wanted to focus on and really kind of emphasize coming out of last year and coming into this year?
One thing that we talk about a lot and have throughout the preseason is we are really good and that we should be competing for a championship in the PAC this year. So having that mindset and coming into every game knowing that we're a really good team and we have a really good chance of winning every single time we play, and having just a different mindset in terms of when it comes to the end of the season that we're in a place to be successful and win that first playoff game at home and make it to the championship game. All the things that we wanted to do at the end of the year last year that came up a little bit short.
Well, I know you bring back a very experienced group of players. You mentioned Jess Bicker, but you have a slew of other players that have been around for a little bit now. How much confidence does that give you, knowing that you do have players that have, like you mentioned, they've gotten to that point of the quarterfinals, but they haven't been able to get over that hump, but they know what it takes to get to that point. How much confidence has that given you?
Right. This is the year where they saw what it takes to get there. Now they see what it takes to win when you're there. And so hopefully we do get over that hump, right? I think Emily brings a ton of confidence for us as a group. Sophia Gennario, she has been key for us, actually, really in the first game, especially against Case and Carnegie. She was a really important part of our offense. So I think she, with her experience as a senior, combined with Emily, really helps us this year with Bickert and Santa Cola as juniors. Now they really get to see too what they can bring and have that confidence for themselves.
And sticking with Emily Lauer, I mean, she has been one of the top scorers in the conference each of the last 2, 3 seasons. What is it about her offensive skill set that just makes her so dangerous on that side of the floor?
Yeah, it's a great question. So she just makes shots that are really, really difficult. She just sometimes looks like she's throwing it up, but we all know on the bench, like, that's got a really high chance of going in. She's great in transition. She has really extended her range throughout the 4 years that she's played for me. I feel like she has devoted time to adding more of the left hand to her game. She was always really good going right. Now she's really good going left. She has worked hard to develop more and more to her game, but she's just somebody that makes shots that are really difficult that you don't think are going to go in, but somehow do.
Yeah, I'm sure you're running through your mind. You're like, I don't know about that. And then it goes in, and then that quickly kind of vanishes into thin air. But I want to go back to Sarah Santacola because she has been a force down low, rebounding defensively, one of the top shot blockers in the conference. What kind of impact does she give you defensively? But then also, how much kind of reassurance does that give other players knowing that, hey, if I get beat, I know that Sarah's going to slide over and help defensively?
Yeah, it's a key component to our defense for sure. Having her being in the middle as a rim protector, shot changer, is everything. It allows us to pressure the ball a little bit more. We don't give up a whole ton of threes. We didn't really last year, and we're going to do a lot of the same stuff defensively this year. So I expect us to be able to pressure somebody with the ball and force them to put it on the floor. And just like you said, know that she's there to change or block a shot. And that's a huge difference maker when you're thinking about your defense as a whole.
And you mentioned all the experienced players, but obviously you bring in, a new crop of young players as well. How have you kind of seen some of these experienced players dip into that leadership a little bit more, knowing that, hey, I was, in those same shoes not too long ago, and you've seen them become even more leaders than they've been in the past?
For sure. We have had probably the most productive captain leadership meetings that we have had in my 4 years here. I attribute that to our upperclassmen for sure. They want to be good. They want to develop the younger players. They want to bring them along. And you're right, they were in their shoes not long ago. And so I think with especially Bickert and Santa Cola, the two of them knowing that this isn't their last year. You know, Emily has always been that leader on the floor who works insanely hard, keeps everybody with her pace wise. But Santa Cola and Bickert are really talking to first years, really talking to one of our sophomores and getting them to stay mentally focused, getting them mentally prepared for things. At halftime, I know that they're having great conversations with the group before we come in as coaches. They've done a lot in terms of leadership this year and took a giant step forward from previous years.
Well, Coach, it's been really exciting to see your group kind of grow over the years, and we're obviously excited to see how it all kind of comes together this season. But before we let you run, want to hear from you with it being another year with like we keep mentioning the same exact players and similar kind of rotation, if you will. What do you think, or at least how much do you think the non-conference slate of games and the really tough, and you mentioned at the top of the interview, playing against Carnegie Mellons of the world and the Case Westerns of the world, how much do you think that's going to help benefit you and your team down the stretch of the season to make a deep run in the playoffs this year?
Yeah, it's always been my mentality that if you want to be a really good team, you've got to play really good teams. So not only did we have Carnegie and Case this past weekend, but we play in Trine's tip-off tournament coming up. So Trine is going to be really good, really, really competitive, and Albion is a very tough physical team, which I think is something we need to see early. So it will definitely help set us up. It's going to give our first years that have to fill in for Bickert a little bit before she's back. It's going to give them experience that is valuable experience. I wouldn't trade the difficult non-conference for anything. Like we could start out the season 6-0 and play some easier teams. That doesn't do much for me. I don't think that helps us in February and March.
Well, as they say, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So we're definitely excited to see how the season goes for you and the Gators. Coach, again, thanks so much for stopping by and good luck the rest of the season.
Thanks so much.
That's Allegheny women's basketball head coach Kelly Muffley. Don't go anywhere as we'll have more action of today's game between Chatham and Allegheny coming up next on the PAC Sports Network.